Thank you all for being here today. And we'll go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover here, really great info. And First of all, I just wanted to let you know that Leah was unable to be here today, so I'm filling in for her. Thank you, Andrea. I'm glad you're here, driving or not. So filling in for Leah today, and my name's Kelly McDermott-Burns, and I'm the East Coast Director of Shelter Animal Reiki Association. And you might have seen me on here once in a while on these Wednesday sessions with my buddy Leah. And so I'm really excited to introduce you guys, if you haven't already met, Gail Pope and Karen Wylie. And they are doing wonderful work in the area of animal hospice and animal long-term care. And so I want to just give a little introduction to them. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll do, I have some questions for Gail and Karen, and then we're going to save, if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we'll save that for the last part. We'll, make sure that Karen and Gail get in what they want to say, and then we'll answer questions at the end of the session. And so also, it's really nice that Karen has posted a little link to a couple of little special bonuses for you guys. And you could check that out as well. The link should be right at the top of the chat. So let's get started. Um, Again, I'm Kelly McDermott-Burns, if you just got on, and we're joined today by Gail Pope and Karen Wylie. And letting people in. This is not my forte. This is Leah's forte. So bear with me as I struggle along. And okay, so Ann can't see the link. All right, so we're here with Gail Pope and Karen Wylie, and many of you know Gail as a SARA board member and the founder of BrightHaven Center for Animal Rescue, Hospice, and Holistic Education. And she's now working closely with Karen, an educator and fellow caregiver, to carry BrightHaven's deep spiritual wisdom forward. Together, they've created the BrightHaven Caregiver Academy to support pet parents through life-changing diagnoses with a focus on presence, love, and honoring each animal's unique journey right through the final breath and beyond. Just amazing work that they're doing. And, so many of us have already experienced the end of life with our animals at home. And so I think it's such a great topic and want to hear more. Can't wait to hear more about this. So I'm gonna just go ahead and get the interview started as I'm letting more people in. I don't know how Leah does this. Like, oh my gosh, I gotta admit, I gotta talk. I mean, it's a lot.
Your
Anyway,
juggling skills. There you
so
go.
yeah. So if you're just coming in, thank you for joining us. And if please make sure you're muted so that we don't have any interruptions. I'm also gonna just give you guys a heads up that Karen's experiencing thunderstorms, so she might have a little difficulty, but hopefully everything works out great. So first of all, I have a question for Gail. How did you meet Kathleen and Leah all those years ago?
Oh my goodness, that's probably too long a story. Let me be as brief as I can. Oh my gosh, I guess Kathleen and I met when she came to BrightHaven in, I may need correcting on this, 2006 or 7. We were just starting to offer an education program and inviting practitioners to come and teach weekends or days, whenever. And Kathleen came. And we kind of fell in love. She fell in love with the animals. They fell in love with her. Her presence was just wonderful. However, I mean, that really was a big day because it always stays in my mind because, the sanctuary we had maybe 80 or more animals indoors, dogs and cats. We had outdoor animals as well. And they were all senior, special needs, or getting close to the end of life. There were some in wheelchairs. There were cats scooting on their bottoms. It was not your normal, if you go into someone's house with animals, it wasn't what you would normally expect to see. And so Kathleen was fairly quiet. And she was Kathleen. She was sweet and wonderful. And little by little, as she met all the animals, she was just seeing the glow, the life, the happiness, the normality and the abnormality, if you like. And then we sat down to have a cup of tea and talk about business. And she said, "Oh my goodness, today has been a very, very special day for me. Today I learned to see with my heart and not my eyes." And so that was just our beginning. That was the first time I met her. And then she started teaching at least once a month at weekends. And Leah became one of her students. And, well, you all know Leah. Leah was excited. She was absolutely overjoyed to be a student. She completely absorbed the work. And oh,
If you're just coming in, please mute yourself. Thank you.
oh, I think we're clear now.
Yeah.
So anyway, making a long story short, we would take breaks in amongst the tuition, and on this particular break, the students were in the kitchen and the breakfast room having tea, coffee, cookies, cake, and Kathleen and I were talking about who knows what in the kitchen, and Leah came in with a big shiny face, and she said, "Oh, I'm so excited, and this is so wonderful, and it's really making me think that Reiki needs to be in more places. It needs to, we need to help animals more. What about in shelters and something like that?" And Kathleen said, "Well, I volunteer at a local shelter, and it's wonderful work. I really enjoy it." And that began the conversation, because Leah was like, "Well, can't we expand that? What can we do?" And that was the beginning of SARA. So absolutely lovely memories, lovely memories.
Oh, I love that so much. And I met all of you shortly after that.
That's right.
And when I went to study with Kathleen at BrightHaven, and it was such a special place. And I was so really taken by how well cared for the animals were. But it was also very interesting to see, IV bags hanging next to the cat sleeping on the thing, and Joey running around in his little wheelies, and it was really eye-opening and really beautiful, and also heart-opening.
Well,
So
it was a wonderful environment for students to not only experience the good, the bad, and the ugly with the animals, but to experience working with energy with the animals, and to realize that although they were learning Reiki, and in their minds, I think we all do at the beginning, we're doing Reiki. But then they started realizing that this was a partnership with the animal, and it wasn't them necessarily doing it, was sharing.
yeah,
They were wonderful days. They were wonderful days. I think we all learned so much from all the animals.
wonderful teachers there, a whole lot of them.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask Karen how you guys met and started working together.
Sure. I had read a couple of Gail's books, and as I was finishing up some death and dying certification programs for humans, I then took one on how to support pet parents during loss. And although that was wonderful, I kept thinking, geez, there's so much I would want to do differently before the loss to help in those decisions that each of us needs to make along the way before the animal dies. And so the day I finished one certification, I found a hospice group. Gail is one of the 4 founders there, and went through that program for a few months. And at the time, our graduation requirement was to meet with one of the 4 founders for 30 minutes. And as luck would have it, I drew Gail as the founder that I would speak with. And after 15 or 20 minutes, we both looked at each other through the Zoom screen, and Gail, correct me if I'm wrong, but Gail said something like, "My God, we've lived parallel paths."
Yes, exactly.
And I said, "Yeah, but we learned a lot of the same lessons." And then we just had a meeting of the minds and hearts, and that's 2.5 years ago, and we've been working together ever since.
That's
You know
wonderful.
what? I was thinking about that earlier, and I wrote a little list, because I didn't get to know the students very well until these meetings when, they would open up and talk more. So we had a similar trajectory in holistic healthcare, hospice care. Then I discovered that Karen was already a Reiki master. She was also a doula. She was experienced in end-of-life issues with her own animals. And to crown it all, she was an experienced medium. And
Oh.
I was not. That we didn't quite come together. Well, we did come together because she had the experience. I had all the spooky stuff, and I love the world of energy in every which way and form. So, the kinds of conversations that we had in that half an hour that probably stretched to about 2 hours,
It did, yeah.
it was just like going into a candy store.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
That's
it was
great.
wonderful and still is wonderful. Yeah.
So Karen, can you tell us more about the BrightHaven Caregiver Academy and how and why that came about?
Absolutely. Um, and as I said earlier, Gail and I were working together at Animal Hospice Group. I came on as executive director there. And AHG focuses on the training and education needs of veterinary professionals and allied animal care practitioners. From the physical side, thinking pet sitters, massage therapists, and so forth, rehab therapists, to spiritual animal communicators, animal chaplains, and everything in between. And so we were feeling good about the curriculum we had to support their development. But at the time, I was looking at it and feeling like we could do something differently for pet parents who would be receiving a difficult or terminal diagnosis on their pets. Because usually in that moment in time, they're not thinking of investing a lot of money in a 6-month training program. They're looking at, what do I do for my baby now? And so I happened to mention that to Gail one day, and she was like, absolutely. And so then, as usually happens, we just start going back and forth, developing our ideas until one of us says, okay, time for a Google Doc. And we start outlining what we want to bring forward. And really within 3 months of the first conversation, the first outline of us saying, what would we do differently if we're going to support pet parents from the moment of their pet's diagnosis? What would we want to do differently? And we started developing. So by August of that year, almost 2 years ago, we knew we were naming it BrightHaven Caregiver Academy and what we wanted to do. But then, of course, Gail and I have had a couple challenges along the way for over a couple years' time. Gail lost Richard in September of 23. My husband had some health challenges, but then I had Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina last September. So we've had that, but we didn't lose our focus. We just had a few delays along the way, and we went live with BCA in February. And so we're developing courses. We have a membership community that allows us to support a pet parent literally from the moment they get a difficult diagnosis on their pet, and starting with where they are at that point. What support do they need when they leave the clinic? And then you start to have all those questions that you're thinking, I wish I'd asked my vet. And Gail and I, of course, are not veterinarians, but we are both caregivers and longtime caregivers of our own pets. And so we take that background and we're putting it into educational materials and tools to help pet parents along the way.
Wonderful. I love that. And I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, so please put them in the chat, and Gail and Karen can address them at the end of the session after we're done with our interview questions.
I've got one more little thing I'd like to add to what Karen said.
Great, yeah.
Which is, it's not very important, but to me, it's really, really important, because what I've found in Karen is somebody who not only mirrored my trajectory in the work that I've done, but I was also at a point in my life where I was realizing, when people say to you over and over again, are you ever going to retire? It does tend to make you kind of more aware of how old you are, and you think about these things.
I feel that.
People are still saying that to me, and it still makes me think. But now I've got it covered, because the one thing that did concern me was that the work of BrightHaven, which is so special, not only to me, but to the many people whose paths have crossed BrightHaven's paths over the years. And it just seemed like I wanted the legacy to go on. And so Karen appeared just at the time when it was like, ding, oh my God, I wonder if she realizes what she's getting into.
Scoop her right up.
Yeah.
She does now, but the problem is now I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to go. However,
Oh no, honey.
exactly.
No, you're not.
I'll let you
We're
guys
having
work
too
that
much
out
fun.
later.
Yeah, we're having too much fun.
Good, good. That's what we like. So, Gail,
Yeah.
while I have you up here, can you describe your approach as holistic, or you describe your approach as holistic or holistic? Can you share what that means in practice, especially when supporting a pet after a life-changing diagnosis?
Well, it's very simple, really, because, and again, all the work we do is very, very tied with Reiki and the Reiki precepts, because it really is about balance. It's about love. It's loving care. It's the holistic part is we're caring for the whole being, body, mind, and spirit. And now again, you're looking at the Reiki philosophy. And so that's exactly what we're doing. We little by little over the years, I kind of developed what I later came to call a menu, because it was very clear that no matter what the illness, no matter the stage in life, the animals that came to us were all treated, I wouldn't say the same, but similarly. There were certain things like classical veterinary homeopathy became a way of life for us. Reiki became a way of life for us. All the different parts of the care for that one being became parts of our menu. So, of course, Reiki's been on the menu of healing for many years. But to us, the most important part of healing is love. And so the menu for healing is its proper name, but it's actually, we call it the love sandwich. And I mean, you can see it on our website. It's something that started as a bit of a joke. I think somebody said to me, it's like you've created a menu here. I said, oh my God, well, this is our menu for healing, because this is how we approach the care of our animals. So that's, it is holistic. We look at body, mind, and spirit. Plus, we're not focused only on the animal. It's the family unit, the caregiver, children, a spouse, whoever's involved in the love and the care of the animal is part of our family. So it's caring for everybody. Karen, you probably have more to say on this, do you?
What I would add is that it's that philosophy that we're taking into the courses that we're developing and the tools and practices that we're trying to put together for pet parents to have an opportunity to work from. In fact, the living quality of life care assessment, and I put the link to that in the chat. We look at quality of life care a little differently. Very often, a pet's quality of life is only something that is looked at the very end of life. And sometimes it's even combined with the question, is it time to euthanize? And that's not where Gail and I come from. So we felt very strongly that one of the first things we needed to develop was a very different quality of life care assessment that is ongoing for every pet parent to be looking at how their pet is doing. And it's an 18 question where you're giving yourself a green light or a yellow light or a red light to get you out of applying numbers in terms of trying to do a truly medical assessment, but looking at how much joy your pet still has in its day-to-day life and the relationships it has with you, other members of your human family and furry family. And it also includes questions for the pet parent to be looking at how they're adapting the care that they provide along the way, and how comfortable they are at that, and identifying when they might need support and when they might need to see their veterinarian. So we're trying to make sure the pet's perspective is in there and the spiritual perspective, which not in, at least in my experience, not all holistic approaches include the spiritual, or it certainly in animal care, it doesn't always include the pet's perspective.
Beautiful.
That's great. Thank you so much. So Karen, earlier this year, you and Gail created a BrightHaven podcast called Peace of Mind for Pet Parents.
We did.
Or I guess this would be Gail and Karen. You can answer, both of you can answer this. And in a recent episode, you both talked about animals choosing the time of their own transition. So can you share what that looked like and how Reiki may have supported that?
Absolutely. And Gail, I'm going to turn to you because the very first episode we did on this, I believe, involved your experience with your cat, Sarah.
Oh,
Funny, isn't that?
You've made me, I just went goosey because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, whose story can I tell? Well, you know, I wonder if I could tell Sarah's story. And I started going goosey and you spoke. So yes, I guess I do have to. I won't tell the whole lot of Sarah's story. Sarah came to me many years ago, still in BrightHaven, probably in the early 2000s, I guess. And I expect you all know that there are some people, some animals that come into your life and without really trying, they touch your heart and soul, and they're with you forever. That's Sarah. She's still with me now. Well, gosh, Sarah's was a long journey. She came because of her health. She had plasmacytic lymphocytic stomatitis. Gosh, I got it right after all these years. And her health was declining, and her wonderful owner, who actually was very famous at the time, brought her to me in the hope that I might be able to heal her. And that's where it all began. There's lots of little stories along the way. The week before Sarah died, we knew her time was coming. She was with us for several years, and you can read her whole story. But during the week before she died, she collapsed. She could barely walk. The sanctuary was lots of different rooms, and each day for 5 days, she went to a different room, and she just sat in the middle of it, or laid down in the middle of it. She was very weak, and she would have a group of cats or dogs, some dogs, that would come literally and sit in a circle around her. And I joined them because I had no idea what was going on. And I mean, in those days, actually, I had a guru by the name of Vicky who actually practiced Reiki, and I thought it was voodoo. So that's kind of where I was back then. And interestingly enough, I thought it was kind of voodoo, but I was very fascinated by this kind of energy that I could feel. So I was on the way. Anyway, Sarah went from room to room each day, one room a day. She was joined by these animals, and the peace, the tranquility, the beauty. I had no idea really what was happening, but it was so special. And then on the Sunday morning, she lay down to die, and she was in my arms, and she went through a very normal dying process, but she didn't die. And then every now and again, she would kind of go into death throes, and she wouldn't leave her body. I was sobbing. My husband was with me. We were panic stricken. Well, he wasn't, I was, but he was trying to calm me down. And he finally said to me, Gail, why don't we call Vicky? Do you think she can help? So it's like, gee, I don't know. We can't get to a vet hospital. What in the world are we going to do? So he called Vicky. She came on the phone, and she talked me through a process, which you'll find we've attached the story, I think, right, Karen?
Yes.
And if the process she talked me through wasn't held together by Reiki, I don't know what it was. I didn't know at that time. I was shaking, trembling, crying, sobbing, trying desperately to hold myself together with this cat who was alive but not alive. And she asked me to envisage 2 silver cords, one joined us both from the umbilical cord, the other joined from the heart. And for me to, in that state, even imagine these two silver cords was a stretch, but she very gently talked me through it. And when I said I could envisage them, she said, okay, I'm going to count to 3, and then you're going to cut the umbilical cord and you're going to watch the heart cord stretch to eternity. And of course, my mind instantly was kind of like, ooh, but I was there. And so I did my best. Sarah turned in my arms. She looked up into my face and she left. She just gave a little sigh and she left. And so looking back all these years later on and knowing that Vicky was a Reiki master, she was on the telephone about an hour away. And yet, had she not been working with me to bring the peace, the energy that was needed for Sarah and for me too. So that's my story.
And it was hearing Gail tell that story about Sarah on our podcast that got me started thinking, because it was like, well, Gail had Vicky to talk her through that difficult time. What if Gail recorded the silver cord story so that other people could benefit from Gail walking them through those steps? And so that's the second PDF and link that we have in the chat, because Gail's done an audio of guided visualization of the silver cord for when you are getting close to losing a pet, or as Gail was describing, perhaps your pet's not ready to leave you just yet, and you need to come to terms with one another to release each other. And so we have the SARA script and story and the audio to help, and that's all free. You guys are the first to get it. Seems appropriate. The SARA story today with Sarah. So
it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's a really powerful story. Thank you, Gail, and thank you, Karen. I know some of us have gone through, sitting by the side of our animals, wondering, what to do, and, is it time, and all of that. And it's just such a beautiful story to hear. Thank you.
It is. It's a lovely story. And of course, Gail has had so many wonderful experiences that she can share with us. And we are putting more materials together that help you prepare your pet for transition, but also prepare yourself.
Yeah, that's really huge. Yeah. And I think it's so important too that you had mentioned that, we're in the moment, we're not prepared because we're not, taking courses or anything to understand how this is all, how we can help and what we can do and what's available until we're in that moment. And It's too late to be able to, gather that. But you guys are such a great resource.
Well, it's what we definitely hope to be. And Gail has been doing this work for much longer than me. I've been doing the work in my private life with my own animals, but we're putting tools and practices together that we hope will help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. So Karen, what spiritual tools or practices have helped you and the families that you support during the final stages of life?
Well, I'm very eclectic in my training, so I tend to pull in from various sources. I've been trained in Reiki in several traditions, so I can bring those in. Some shamanic practices come into play as well. The Native American practices typically call it a calling in of the ancestors, which is when you're using the names of those who have gone before, who have passed on, and using that to anchor yourself and your pet. And so I have always found that helpful to envision that my pets are going to be meeting up very soon with people they have known and loved and other pets in our family that have gone on before. And so I do that in a very ceremonial way, very short ceremony, like 2 or 3 minutes, but almost every day, just in talking with my animals of what they can expect and what's probably going to happen. And I use a lot of animal communication practices as well. One of the most common is the belief that animals communicate more through pictures and images, uh, perhaps more than even the words that they understand from us. And so I close my eyes and I really focus very much on trying to communicate visually to my animals. Um, and so again, a lot of that is soothing me as the pet owner, preparing my pet, and yet energetically, whether I'm hands-on or hands-off with my Reiki, um, my animals also are soothed by these kinds of practices. And so there's a lot of different things that we can do, again, to prepare ourselves and our animals at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, I really love that, that idea of, knowing that the animals are going to be with the animals that have been in your life and your ancestors, and it's so comforting for us. I always love that. There was a tradition or I don't know, I read it somewhere where when an animal dies, or when you die, you go and all the animals you've ever loved are there waiting for you. I love that. That gives me comfort too.
Me too. Me too. I wish each of them could come back just for one day a year, some way to continue. And so I imagine in my head that they're with me. And we lost a wonderful tabby boy a couple of years ago, Mr. Hope, and my two Aussies, Shay and Livy, adored him. And so all I have to do is say, "Is Mr. Hopi with us?" And the two of them perk right up. They look over at the cat tree where he would sleep. And then, most interesting, they turn to the corner above our woodpile near our fireplace, and that is where they focus. That's where he is when he comes to visit. And they just stare. They just stare. And it'll be like that for 30, 40 seconds, which is a long time for an Aussie. But yeah, I mean, they're very, very keyed in to the relationships they have with one another. And so um, I've adapted my calling in of the ancestors to include the furry family, and it seems to fit for them and for me.
I love that. Yeah, perfect. Gail, how about you? What spiritual tools or practices have helped you?
Well, certainly none as diverse as Karen. Oh gosh, although I do try. Um, for myself, well, I'm really looking at it because I do an awful lot of consultation work, and so I can see what other people's needs are. And I think for the most part, again, this is where Reiki comes in. When I'm talking to someone, they are focused on what's going on with their animal, what they can do, what they can't do, how they can do it. They're not focusing at all on themselves. So for me, that is one of the biggest gifts that I can give, is to let them talk and then talk about it and talk about the things that help with them healing, because this is a partnership and they're so worried about their animal that they're not living in the moment. They're not enjoying the time. We obviously, we all experience, well, I think sometimes we're not aware of it, but we experience anticipatory grief before our animals die. And if you recognize that, then you can actually be in the moment with your animal more. We know that smiling is contagious. We know that laughter is healing. Those kinds of things, we push them to the side because we're worried, and we don't share and care and actually be with our animals. Again, here comes Reiki. We need to concentrate on the being and not always the doing. There's so much to do towards the end of life, or in a chronic or an acute illness, that we unselfishly put ourselves to the side, but sometimes that doesn't work well enough. And I think that's one of the main things that I've learned in this area.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we are not that we have people we can talk to about what's happening that aren't kind of like, oh, it's just an animal kind of thing,
Mm,
because they're family members and it's
yes,
really devastating for us. So
yes.
beautiful. So I know you've written a lot of books, and I wonder if you could maybe give us the name of a book that you would recommend for reading for this topic.
Probably, I don't know. I mean, there are two. There's Follow Your Heart, which is all about navigating a terminal diagnosis, and then Saw My Butterfly, which is related to literally Saw My Butterfly. It's kind of self-explanatory at the end of life. So I guess, what would you say, Karen?
I was going to suggest Soar My Butterfly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Great. All right,
Yes, I think
then.
understanding the process of dying. You know,
Mhm.
we live in these houses that we call our bodies, and when the time comes to die, as a culture, we've become so fearful. And yet it is as natural as living and birthing. It is part of the great circle of life. So I think, again, when we have an understanding of energy, we have, if we don't all have a belief that life goes on after death, but if we can sink ourselves into the energy of that kind of a feeling that life goes on, then it's not, I mean, it's always going to hurt our hearts.
Mhm.
But looking at the transition as transition and knowing that the furry, beautiful body I'm looking at isn't actually your loved one, it's the house they're living in.
Mhm.
And if you, I mean, it's hard to make that separation, but if you can even understand it, I think that helps in the process so much because
Mhm.
you're helping them to step out of their house and you're honoring that house as the house that you both love.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I remember years ago when you spoke at the SARA retreat and you talked about how you would talk to, you would go to these conferences with veterinarians and you would ask how many of you have ever sat with an animal who died naturally. And you were like no one. So yeah, I hope that's changed over the years
It's,
with your,
yeah, it
you
is
and Karen.
changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, it is changing a little bit, mostly with veterinarians who have become holistically minded. You know, the word integrative became the in thing a few years ago, and as we've expanded that that piece in the middle where the holistic approach meets the conventional approach, it's a more comfortable place for veterinarians. And little by little, I think, particularly on the holistic side of that equation, they're starting to be a little open, but most of them have had no experience. That's the,
Mhm.
you know, they know what they know, and it's difficult to counsel a client
Mhm.
when you actually don't have the experience.
Right.
I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I guess I was born into this world to have the experience of hundreds of animal deaths and a few
Mhm.
humans, but it it never removes, I think the one thing I would say, it never removes your fear because
Right.
as parents, we don't want our loved ones to suffer. That's the huge topic, but suffering is an emotional thing. It's not necessarily physical. And
Mhm.
so I think just learning to just take a deeper understanding of life and love
Mhm.
is the base of all of it.
Yeah. And what would you and Karen want every Reiki practitioner or pet parent to remember as they sit beside an animal facing illness or transition? And I think you just answered that,
Yeah,
but
I
so we're
think
gonna go to
so.
Karen.
I think Gail did answer it. For me, it's just the underscoring that our pets do have ideas of their own as sentient beings, and they can control when they leave us to some degree, to very often. And so, as you're sitting with an animal at end of life, to it's not all about you having to make all the decisions. It's
Mhm.
not you don't pressure yourself that you have to be the one to determine when it's time. Your pet will guide the way for you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about Reiki is that we're more open, especially when we're able to just be in the space with an animal. We have more awareness of what's transpiring that we might not have otherwise.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. What a great topic. And, it's wonderful to have you here. You're so knowledgeable, and I love hearing what you have to say. I'm sure everybody's enjoying. It's hard to say you're enjoying the topic, but it's so informative and much needed. And I'm really grateful that you guys are here today. And I don't see any questions in the chat, but let's see. Somebody was asking about the links and I reposted that, but would anybody like to, does anybody have questions for Gail or Karen? Claudia.
Yeah, I just love the work you do. I'm sorry, I've lost my voice, a bit overwhelmed. It was so beautiful, but emotional. But thank you for the work that you do. And I was just wondering, is there a way to get involved? Because it really resonates with me.
Absolutely. We'd love you to, first of all, sign up for our email list at brightpathforpets.com. That'd be the first step I would encourage you to take, so that you can learn about our podcast each week, the topics and when the episodes are released and what we're doing, and stay in touch with us. That'd be a great first step. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you.
You could also consider joining us. What day is it? It's Wednesday. Tomorrow. Every Thursday at the moment we have a cuppa and conversation. So we just invite members to come along and just join us for an hour, and we talk about whatever comes up, whatever's topical for anybody.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
And Judy's asking what the email was again. Could we maybe pop it in the chat?
You can send it to me at Karen@brightpathforpets.com.
Okay. And
We'll get you signed up.
we have a question from let's see, we've got a question from Judy Roach. What was the email? Oh, no. This is from Mary Ellen Shaw. How do you help your pet through the transition?
Oh gosh, how many hours do you have to listen to?
A long one, huh?
Oh my goodness gracious. I think knowledge is the first thing. Having an understanding of what you may see transition for humans and for animals, if we're talking about the final act of transition, because dying is a process, death itself is a process. So, it can be a long event. But I think learning what you can about that is probably the very first step, and learning how, well, I think understanding that, let's face it, in this world, euthanasia is or has become the kindest way for a life to end for an animal. But we would challenge that and just say that sometimes euthanasia is absolutely the right decision, whether it be for the animal or for the caregiver who cannot care for that animal. But we like to look at it a little bit of a different way, in that for us, death is natural. It's a natural event. And so that is our focus, with the knowledge that if that cannot be achieved for whatever reason, then we do have the ability to choose euthanasia. I think I sidestepped a little bit from the question, didn't I?
No, I think that's
Well, it is a big question, just as you're saying, and because we need to support pet parents basically on two different levels, because one is helping them understand the physical changes in the dying process, the physical aspects of the dying process. But then, as we were saying earlier, for both Gail and I, it's the spiritual transition, the energetic transition that is taking place. And so there's two different things happening. And it can be very helpful. People don't have to have any particularly strong or specific spiritual belief. If they believe that there might be something beyond themselves, that's kind of, if they get to that point, then the spiritual transition of their pet is often something that will be an amazing learning experience for them to have.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Charis?
So nice to see you both.
Hey, Cherise, hi.
So a question that I come across a lot, and even for myself, and I just want to know what your take is on it from the animal's perspective, is I know animal parents are grieving and they don't want to show that grief to the animal because they think that they're going to create stress. So they try to pretend that nothing's really happening and that distances them from the animal, or they're overly emotional, or they sense that they're overly emotional and that that's creating another problem. So how do you advise animal parents and caregivers to manage what they're feeling in the presence of the animal, and what is the effect on that animal?
Oh gosh, I talk about that all the time to the state to being boring, I think, with clients, because I think we all do it. We try to shield our children as well as our animals from our emotions. And it kind of sounds funny, but when you look at it as cat speaks cat, cat speaks dog, cat speaks human, and so do dogs. You turn it around and they're bilingual, multilingual. As humans, most of us aren't. And therein lies the difference. We don't seem to realize, or many people don't, because you're so absorbed in your caregiving and caring for this animal that you don't realize they understand. They know we're in the kitchen crying. They know we're in the bathroom mopping our eyes and they're, oh my God, I mustn't let him see me cry. And so I try to open this up for people to understand they need to go and put their arms around their animal, as long as it doesn't hurt them, and just lie down and cuddle them and, excuse me, just share and care and do it all together, because it's the most healing thing you can do. Because acknowledging grief together is, to me, it's what it's all about.
Mhm. Yeah. Grieving together, grieving with them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They understand a lot more than we do most of the time, I think.
I think it's, in all honesty, it's become something that it didn't strike me for years, actually, until one day a volunteer came into BrightHaven. I think it was on a Monday morning, and one of our animals had actually died on I think it may have been Bobby, on the Sunday. And she came in and the music was playing. I was cleaning litter boxes, doing laundry, doing all sorts of things, and stroking an animal and just doing general daily life. And she was there for a while, and then she said to me, I'm so sorry for your loss. So I said, oh, thank you. Yes, and we talked a little about him. And she said, may I ask you why you're kind of almost back to business as usual? Why? And she really made me stop and think. And at first I felt really guilty. I'm laughing and singing and scooping litter boxes where I should be sitting in the corner crying, and this is terrible. What am I so heartless? But then as I opened it up, I realized that, yes, I still miss them. Yes, I have my moments. But now we're into our 3-day process. So I've already got the animal set up in a beautiful honoring situation. But the grief, that actual raw gut feeling, we did that together. I don't need to do that anymore. That's not present. And I as I say, I hadn't quite realized how animals had taught me to grieve with them before they died, and then allow honor and celebration afterwards. Not easy, but it makes sense when you really turn it upside down and think about it.
Do we have any more questions? We have some time. Sarah Benson said, big thanks for how you support others in the world.
Thank you.
You can raise your hand if you have a question. All right. Well, if no one has questions, I thought we could maybe do a little meditation for our animals that have gone beyond us. And Diane Donahue says, thank you all. This was wonderful. Cara Carrillo says, such a gift to hear from you today. Thank you. So let's do a little meditation and just settle on in. Take a couple of deep breaths to feel yourself just getting back in your seat and relax. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, just nice slow breaths here. Take a moment to bring your hands into Gasho and gratitude, and also to set our intention for this little meditation. And I'd like you to bring to mind animals in your life that you would like to send some beautiful energy to. Those who have gone on ahead of us. And when you've brought those beautiful beings to mind, take a moment and place your hands over your heart center. Feel all the love that resides in your heart. With every breath, a beautiful light of heart-centered love is right there under your hands. Breathing in and out and feeling with every breath all the beautiful light of your heart just strengthening and expanding. It's breathing in and out quietly and holding those animals in your mind, and now bringing them into your heart. Invite them into the energy of your heart to reside there with you. Maybe they're already there and you're just noticing them, or just acknowledging that they're present. With every breath, that light in your heart is stronger and stronger, full of love, compassion, and peace, full of gratitude for those animals that we've had the good fortune to have in our lives, those who gave us their time and their love. Breathing into this energy now and breathing into your heart and breathing that love. Maybe take a moment to think of whatever it is that your animal friends remind you of, or what they did, or what they made, how they made you laugh, anything like that. Just take a moment to acknowledge that as well. How has this animal made a difference in my life? Breathing in and out, feeling all those precious beings in your heart center. Now setting your intention to finish, thanking your animal friends for being with you. Know that they always reside in our hearts. And bringing our hands together in gratitude and deep gratitude for this community and for Gail and Karen, who do amazing and difficult work. And with a nice deep breath, we'll end that meditation. Thank you all so much for being here. And Andrea DeSantos says, thank you so much. This was perfect. And Wendy Metler-Wheeler is asking, where do we learn the process of grieving with them? I recently lost a heart dog that I had no idea, nor did he, that he was going to die. His health turned south quickly, and we had to take him to the ER, and he passed in the oxygen tank. I did not have time to grieve with him.
That's so difficult.
Mm.
I would suggest looking at that link for the silver cord, which describes a process that Gail has taken people through, and perhaps use that as a starting point to come to some peace yourself about your pet's loss,
Mm.
and to say goodbye in a different way that guided visualization might allow you. And the link is in the chat.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wendy says thank you. So everybody, if you're all set, no more questions, we're going to close. And once again, and Mary Ellen says, my dog is 15 and declining, but she does not manifest any intention of leaving.
Good.
Trina says thank you, and Dawn says thanks. And so we have a link here for brightpathforpets.com. So everybody, thank you so much for being here. This video will be cleaned up and ready to go on the YouTube channel at some point, and then Leah will, I'm sure, send out the usual recap email. I'm so grateful for her work with SARA and all she does for us. So thanks for your patience with me as I muddle through my very first interview for this group, and I hope you guys have a great day. Just really want to thank again Gail and Karen for taking the time out of their busy days, helping us understand more about how we can help our pets and our families and our kids and all of that when we're in ourselves as we're going through these things, which we're bound to encounter. So
Well,
Thanks,
I would
Kelly.
like to actually say thank you to you, Kelly. You have done an absolutely wonderful job today. Absolutely. I'm
well, thanks. Don't tell Leah that. She might ask me to do it again.
Well, you should. You should.
Well, thank you both, and thank you everyone for coming and for your questions and your attention to what we're doing here, and your interest in what we're offering at SARA and what Gail and Karen are offering as well. So hope to see you all next time, and take good care.
Thanks.
Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.